They mocked us, right up until the sky cracked open and Earth spoke in thunder. For 3 centuries, humanity was little more than a footnote in the galactic archives. A broken species, scattered colonies, no homeworld, no fleet, no threat. The Zaleth Dominion had seen to that. Their war cruisers reduced Earth to a glowing scar and salted its orbit with debris. Not for conquest, but to send a message: primitive species do not rise, and the galaxy nodded, turned away, and forgot us. But in the shadow of extinction, something ancient and dangerous awoke. Not a weapon, not a technology, a memory. On the mighty moon of Varos 9, tucked into the asteroid belt graveyard of the Soul Drift, the last human veterans worked with bleeding hands and rusted tools. They called themselves the Ashburn, survivors of the scorching. Most were old, most were broken, but they remembered things the stars hoped to forget. Among them walked a quiet figure, scarred, silent, and heavy with weight. Rourke Vale, once a commander in Earth's final orbital fleet, now a mechanic patching hydrocores and loading or crates like any other exile. He didn't speak much, but he listened, and what he heard on that gray morning made his blood run cold. A low tremor under his boots, a flicker in the mining drone's telemetry, and then a transmission, raw and guttural, blaring through outdated comms. By order of the Zaleth Council, Varos 9 is marked for extraction clearance. All non-Zaleth must evacuate. Refusal is treason. It wasn't a war declaration. It wasn't even personal. The Dominion had discovered a rare mineral vein under the colony, and their standard policy was simple: clear the infestation, strip the world, and move on. But there were 4,000 humans on Vier OS-9. None had ships, none had weapons, and none would be spared. Rourke didn't flinch when the broadcast ended. He simply walked to his locker, the one no one ever saw him open, and pulled out a black case etched with an old emblem, UEF, Unified Earth Forces. Vanguard protocol. Inside lay a single gauntlet, fused with obsidian alloy, humming faintly with power that didn't belong in this time. With practiced fingers, Rourke strapped it on. He turned to the others in the mess hall. Miners, engineers, farmers, children, seal the tunnels, he said. Lock down the vents. They'll come in fast, and we'll need to bleed them. Slow, old eyes blinked at him. Young faces froze. Someone laughed, nervously, bitterly. Against them, Rourke, we've got nothing left. But Rourke just looked up, and in his voice was something they hadn't heard in decades: conviction. They thought Earth died. Let's show them what death taught us. That night, through the cracked skylights of Varos 9, they saw them arrive. Zaleth, warships, cold, silver, perfect, like blades forged in starlight. For capital vessels, 12 gunships, and thousands of Dominion enforcers in black exo-frames, each one faster, stronger, and deadlier than any unarmed human. They landed with precision. No words, no mercy. The purge began, and in the first 6 minutes, nearly 100 colonists were dragged screaming from the outer sectors, some stunned, some dissected, some just vaporized for efficiency. But in the 7th minute, the screaming stopped. In Sector D4, one squad of enforcers breached a reinforced door. What they found wasn't fear. It was a wall of fire, thermal charges, mining lasers, plasma welders rigged as turrets. Crude, yes, but behind them stood 50 humans in old Earth armor, scrap-forged and flame-scarred, led by a man with a glowing gauntlet and eyes that remembered too much. Rourke Vale didn't give a speech. He just pointed the gauntlet forward, and the tunnel lit up with a pulse of ancient Earth war tech that hadn't been seen since the fall. The blast tore through the Dominion squad like paper. The war had begun. In the darkness below, as Dominion reinforcements began mobilizing deeper, faster, and angrier, a child, Alaya, barely 10, crawled through the old maintenance shafts with something clutched to his chest. A drive core, but not just any drive. The Black Shard engine, a relic, pulled from deep beneath the colony decades ago, too dangerous to touch, too complex to understand. Even Rourke feared it. Even the Dominion had missed it. And now it pulsed, like it recognized what was coming. Alaya didn't understand it, but the words etched on the casing were burned into his mind. For when Earth has no voice left, let this be its roar. Asterisk. From the sky they came, not as soldiers, but as gods reminding insects of their place. The Zaleth Dominion didn't wage war like other species. They didn't posture. They didn't negotiate. They cleansed sector by sector. Varos 9 lit up with Fire, Rourke watched the outer habitats vanish on his tactical display. Red lights blooming where people had lived for decades. Even with the improvised defenses, the humans couldn't stop them in open ground. Enforcer squads burned through bulkheads like paper and moved with the precision of death itself. He spoke calmly over comms, pulled to fallback zones, sealed lower tunnels, route power to internal grids. Someone replied, voice panicked. They breached the nursery levels, hold them, 5 minutes, then pull. We're not winning this here. We're buying time. Deep beneath the colony, Elia clutched the black shard engine like a secret no one should know. He didn't understand the patterns flashing across its surface, geometric shapes and humming pulses like language unspoken. But it was calling him dot, not in words dot and feeling dot, terror dot, fire dot, and something more, distant. Metal scraping the stars, he crawled through collapsed shafts, dragging the core on a harness of twisted cables. He didn't know why, but he had to bring it to Substation E, the old reactor site the others never used. That's what it showed him. A map burned into his thoughts, a place where Earth's scream could become a sword. Above ground, Dominion Command watched with detached efficiency. In the central warship, High Strategist Kale hovered before a projection of the colony's interior. His long-spined fingers clicked rhythmically, each motion sending new squads deeper. Rerouting energy grids, deploying bioscanners, minimal resistance, primitive countermeasures, estimated purge complete in one standard rotation. A younger Zaleth, Tarvin, frowned, but they disabled 6 squads. Losses unexpected. Their tactics are erratic. Urzel didn't turn. They clinged to instinct. Panic. That's not resistance. It's desperation. Let them claw. It will make their end feel earned. He gestured again, and on the screen, a flashing signal appeared. Sector EA core energy. Spike far beyond the colony's known tech range. Urzel narrowed his gaze. That shouldn't exist. In the comms bay below, Rourke stared at the same spike. His eyes went wide. No, he muttered. He ran. The memory hit as he sprinted. Operation Obsidian Vault, Earth's last defense project. When orbital collapse was inevitable, Earth's engineers didn't just surrender. They buried things, forbidden things. Weapons they swore no one should ever unearth. Weapons that burned reality, not just flesh. The Black Shard engine was one of them. He'd seen it once, before the fall, and he prayed it never came back. Elia stood in the heart of Substation E now, walls glowing faint blue, dust trembling, lights blinking awake after decades of silence. He placed the core onto the pedestal that rose automatically from the floor. Like the station had been waiting for this moment. The lights changed. The room breathed dot, and then it spoke. Black Shard. Detonation core prime dot target signature. Earth hostile. Zaleth genomic pattern confirmed. Activation authority. Human biometrics required. Elias stared in awe as the console scanned him. A child, but human. Match confirmed. Earth memory authorized. And from the ceiling, a hologram emerged. It wasn't a weapon. It was a face. A woman in an old Earth uniform, worn and pixelated by time. She smiled gently. My name is General Alarican. If you're seeing this, Earth is gone, and they've come again. You are humanity's last question to the stars. Elias' eyes welled. He didn't understand all the words, but he understood the feeling. You are not alone. Rourke burst into the station seconds later. Elia. No. He roared, but he stopped cold. He saw the projection. He saw the core. And he saw the boy standing in front of Earth's final gift. The floor shook violently. A tremor from above. Rourke's comms buzzed with static and broken screams. Then, silence. A new voice filled the air. Not human. Kale. We see what you've awakened. You misunderstand mercy. You believe vengeance is strength. You will be undone. Rourke stepped forward, kneeling to Elia. His voice cracked, soft. You don't have to do this, kid. This thing, it doesn't stop them. It erases everything. But Elia didn't step back. He stared at the glowing interface. I think it needs more than me, he whispered. It's not a bomb. It's a call. Rourke blinked. A what? Above, the Dominion fleet prepared a planetary sterilization strike. Their standard response to anything they couldn't explain. Inside the Black Shard system. The lights turned red. Multi-source biometric required. Ancient defense beacon. Sync pending. Rourke looked at the gauntlet on his arm, the one he'd sworn never to use again. It was blinking. A final protocol. A forgotten voice. A choice. He raised his hand. His palm touched the interface beside the boy's. 2 pulses. Became 1. Double quotes confirmed. Signal unlocked. Broadcast initiating. Vanguard rise. Across the void, in deep black systems where Earth's lost outposts drifted in silence. In forgotten nebulae where secret ships slept, something stirred. Engines roared that hadn't fired in 200 years. Codes decrypted. Cores warmed. Satellites turned. Eyes open, and an old frequency rippled through the galaxy. To all Earthborn, stand by. Protocol Blackshard initiated. The Dominion's purge had just awakened something they could never understand, and for the first time in centuries, humanity called for war. The stars trembled, not because we returned, but because we remembered how to fight. Above Varro's 9, the Zalef Dominion fleet shifted formation. Their scanners, precise to the micron, stuttered. Energy signatures long thought extinct were now lighting up across old human territories, ghost zones, black flag sectors, forgotten graveyards. But they weren't quiet anymore. The Blackshard signal wasn't just a flare. It was a key dot, and it had unlocked humanity's wrath. Rourke watched from the substation control deck as the dormant reactor around him spun to life. The walls sang, not with radiation or heat, but with memory. Old Earth battle maps, human war hymns encoded in data pulses, defensive patterns auto-loaded into forgotten satellites buried in asteroid fields light years away. The Vanguard protocol had reactivated, and for the first time in generations, Earthborn systems were no longer silent. Across the Helix Reach, a derelict moon spun listlessly near the corpse of a dead star. Inside it lay Hades Arc 7, one of Earth's final military cryovaults, buried so deep even humans had forgotten it existed. The Blackshard signal reached it. Door sealed in vacuum. For centuries hissed open. Steam flooded the chamber. Lights flickered on, one by one. Cryopods lit green. Inside them, soldiers, Earth's last generation super soldiers, void walkers, engineered for orbital decimation and deep space infiltration. As their neural implants sensed the signal, one of them stirred first. Kayla Strin, rank, colonel, status, presumed Kier, directive, activate when the stars forget our name. She opened her eyes and smiled. On Varro's 9, Rourke's comms burst to life. Command, this is Kayla Strin. Vanguard confirms signal. Identify origin. Rourke blinked. Strin, how are you even alive? Her voice, hard and crisp, cut through static like a blade. No time. This signal, it's waking every hidden fleet. We're burning black across the grid. You, lit the fire. Commander Vale, what's your citrop? Rourke turned to Elia, still watching the swirling energy of the Blackshard core. The boy was pale, but focused. We've got a civilian colony under purge, 1 functioning gauntlet, 1 legacy core, and 1 kid who just reignited a war. Then hold, Commander, reinforcements inbound. High strategist Urzel Kale stood rigid aboard the Zaleth flagship. As a dozen new Earth energy signatures appeared on his console, none of them made sense. Each one originated from confirmed dead zones. And worse, they were triangulating around his fleet. They're converging, his aide said, voice hushed. Kale didn't respond. His spines were rigid with disbelief. This is impossible. Humanity was broken. He studied the interface again and finally noticed something strange. Each signal carried a name. Lion's Wake, Vengeance Protocol, Earth's Echo, Silence Breaker. The ships had names again. Human names. Meanwhile, Elias sat quietly beside the Blackshard core as it dimmed. Its work done, Rourke placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. You did something impossible, he said softly. Elia looked up. Did we win? Rourke stared at the ceiling, where distant explosions echoed down into the mines. Not yet, but for the first time, we're not dying quietly. Above the colony, a silence fell. Then, the stars shifted. A streak of light cut across the void. Then another, and another. The first Earth thread not broke. Warp.UEF-VALO or ion dot. Its hull bore ancient scars, but its cannons were already rotating into position. Behind it came Timor, and flanking them, a dozen support cruisers bearing the old United Earth Forces insignia, relit after centuries of darkness. On the Dominion bridge, alarm screamed. Kale turned in disbelief. Where did they come from? But no one had answers. Human ships were materializing in real space from folds the Dominion didn't even recognize. One cruiser powered up its comms, an open channel. This is Admiral Solon Wraith of the UEF. To Zaleth forces, disengage and withdraw. You will not survive this sector. The Dominion responded the only way they knew how. Their warships opened fire. Lances of ion plasma cut through space, fast, brilliant, deadly, but the UEF Valorian didn't flinch. It returned fire with a weapon unseen for generations, the Soulship Array, a spiral-mounted energy weapon developed during Earth's final days. The beam carved through the lead Dominion vessel, slicing it clean in half. Explosions bloomed in space like frozen flowers. Zaleth formations shattered, panicking, on the colony below. The sky lit up as falling debris streaked down like burning rain, but none hit the surface. The Valorian's orbital shield activated, catching the fragments and disintegrating them in blue light. In the tunnels, human survivors emerged, blinking into the glow. For the first time in their lives, they looked up and saw something impossible, an Earth fleet alive, fighting, protecting. Tears fell freely. Some fell to their knees. Others clutched old pendants or whispered names long dead. One miner whispered, "They came back for us." Rourke didn't speak. He looked at the LIH. The boy's eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. "They're not here for us," he said. Rourke looked at him, puzzled. "They're here because of us." In every corner of the galaxy, similar awakenings had begun. Hidden shipyards roared to life. Stealth orbital platforms turned toward old coordinates. Satellites lost to myth began to transmit one message: Protocol Blackshard active. Earth endures. We thought the worst had passed, but the galaxy always bleeds hardest before it breathes. The wreckage of the Dominion's shattered command ship still burned in orbit above Varos 9, its hull twisting through vacuum like a dying god. But no one celebrated. Not yet. Because the Zaleth Dominion never lost without answering. And when they answered, it was with fire. 3 days after the first Earth fleet reappeared, Dominion retaliation came, not from orbit, but from within. Rourke stood in the command center of Substation E, his gauntlet interfacing with the revived defense grid. Reports came in from allied systems across the Helix Reach, Earth Node and Sector C7 sabotaged. Civilian fleet ambushed by false transponder signals. One of the reawakened dreadnoughts detonated from the inside. Someone whispered the word they all feared: infiltrators. The Dominion hadn't just watched humanity rise again, they prepared for it. Planted seeds years ago, whispered to desperate survivors. Promised safety in exchange for obedience. Rourke clenched his jaw. They always knew we'd come back, he said grimly. They just didn't expect when. On board the UEF Valorian, Admiral Solon Wraith paced his command bridge. His eyes, bright but weathered, watched the holomap as dozens of red indicators flared to life. Across the sector, they're dividing our fleet, he muttered. His second in command, Commander Idris Harlan, stepped forward. "Sir, if they isolate the dreadnoughts, they'll fall, one by one, like the last time." The room fell silent at those words. The last time, the fall of Earth, the genocide, the silence that followed. Admiral Wraith tapped the control pad. "Send orders to all awakened fleets. Converge on Aegis Point, Earth's final fallback sector. If we die again, we do it together." Back on Varos 9, Alaya was quiet. The Blackshard core no longer glowed. Its energy had withdrawn, not dead, but dormant, like it was waiting. Alaya stood near the core, his small hand brushing its metal surface. "It's scared," he whispered. Rourke knelt beside him. "It's a machine, Alaya." "No." The boy shook his head. "It remembers." That word again. Remember. Everything was memory now. Technology, tactics, names. Earth hadn't won with power. It had endured through pain so deep it etched into circuits and stars. That was humanity's secret. We remembered everything, even the parts we tried to forget. A scream ripped through the comms room. Rourke spun, saw the blood first, then the body. Lieutenant Gora, dead. And behind her, someone familiar, Merrick Vale, Rourke's own brother, wearing a Dominion-coated exoframe, pulse knife still hot. Rourke froze. "Merrick." The man didn't flinch. "They offered peace," he said, coldly, "a place in the new order. You chose extinction." Rourke stared at him, torn between rage and grief. "We chose to remember who we are." Merrick smiled faintly. "Then remember this." He activated his wrist pad, and somewhere deep in the colony, the power grid exploded. Flames roared down. Corridors, lights shattered. Screams erupted. Merrick vanished into the chaos. The colony fractured. Oxygen levels dropped. Radiation warnings screamed across the consoles. Get to the lower shelters, Rourke shouted, grabbing Elia and sprinting down the shaft. Above them, automated defenses rebooted. Confused, some targeting FRIENDLIES. The betrayal had cost them dearly, dozens dead, hundreds trapped. And worst, the core itself was damaged, not destroyed. But wounded. Its hum faded into a sickening silence. In orbit, Dominion reinforcements arrived. Not sleek warships like before, no. These were cleansers, planet breakers, machines the size of cities, each carrying enough antimatter to hollow out a moon. Admiral Wraith watched them enter the system, and he understood the Zaleth weren't trying to win. They were trying to erase. This wasn't just a war anymore. It was a final chapter. Get Elia off the surface, Rourke barked, dragging the boy through a collapsing tunnel as tremors cracked steel. No, Elia shouted, eyes blazing. It's not done. You'll die if we stay. So what? The boy's voice stopped Rourke cold. I started this. I lit the fire. If I run now, what will they remember of us? That silence was worse than the explosions. Rourke stared at him, a child, barely 10, and yet, already humanity. Braver than soldiers, truer than kings. All right, Rourke said, teeth gritted. Then we finished what you started. They reached the heart of the broken core. Smoke curled from damaged circuits. Energy leaked like blood. But Rourke had an idea. We can reroute the defense uplink through the gauntlet. Reignite the shard manually. Elia blinked. You'll burn yourself. Rourke looked down at the gauntlet. Glowing, flickering, cracking. I've burned before. He pressed his hand to the core. Electricity screamed. The floor cracked. The room pulsed with unbearable light. But something happened. A voice. Not from the walls. From the stars. Link stabilized. Tactical override authorized. Earthfire beacon engaged. Across the light channels, the signal cut through jamming. UEF ships changed trajectory. Satellites spun to attention. The Dominion's orbital command systems began to fail. Scrambled by ancient Earthfire codes buried inside their own systems. Sabotage from centuries past. Planted before the fall. We knew this day would come, and we planned for it. High strategist Urzel Kale watched his systems collapse. No, he hissed. Not again. His aide turned to him. Sir, one of their dreadnoughts just jumped into the center of our formation. Kale turned, and there, rising through the clouds like vengeance made metal, came the UEF Legatus. Its hull bore 6 words in ancient Terran script, let none mock Earth again. The galaxy laughed at Earth's silence. Now, in terror, it listens to our roar. The UEF Legatus broke through the atmosphere like a judgment long overdue, a relic of old Earth's final war days. The Dreadnought-class warship had vanished just hours before the scorching. Most believed it had been destroyed. They were wrong. It had buried itself in a deep space fold, locked by failsafes, waiting for the Black Shard signal to wake it. And now, it rose, fully armed, fully awake. It didn't send warnings. It didn't transmit demands. Its first shot vaporized the Dominion cruiser with such force, local gravity flared. In the ruins of Substation E, Rourke Vale dropped to his knees as power circuits exploded around him. His gauntlet had fused to his skin. The veins in his arm pulsed with a dim golden light. Rourke. Elia crawled toward him, coughing through the smoke. The pulse. Are you? I'm here, Rourke growled, forcing himself up. His voice was rough, but steady. The shard's not fully healed, but it's listening again. He turned toward the collapsing ceiling where Dominion enforcers breached through from above. And for the first time, Rourke didn't fall back. He charged with one motion. He flung his arm forward, and the gauntlet erupted in a gravitational surge, slamming the attackers against the walls with bone-crushing force. He didn't smile, but something inside him ignited. In orbit, Admiral Wraith stood on the bridge of the Valorian, watching new data flood in from reawakened listening posts. Dozens of coded Earthfire signals, systems lighting up that hadn't been touched in 300 years. Sir, Commander Harlan said, it's real. It exists. Wraith's jaw tightened. Where? Coordinates triangulate to the arc belt. Deep within the dark matter cloud, Wraith's hand hovered over the console. The last contingency, Earth's final weapon, Project Revenant. It had always been a myth, a last resort deterrent, whispered about in Earth's final days. Not a fleet, not a bomb, a presence, part AI, part human legacy, a consciousness forged from every war, every death, every sacrifice, one mind, one vengeance, designed to awaken only when all else failed. Back on Varros 9, the colony burned. Dominion reinforcements were relentless. Enforcer squads swept the tunnels, choking out survivors. But something shifted. Humans stopped running. They started fighting back. Miners wielded industrial welders like spears. Engineers rerouted power to overload corridors as traps. Old veterans dragged out century-old rifles and made every shot count. A nurse, Lyra Mayan, stood over the wounded with a shattered scalpel, blood-streaked and crying, yet refusing to move. A mother threw herself over her child as a plasma bolt hit her spine, but lived long enough to see a Dominion soldier fall to a boy's repurposed welder blade. These were not soldiers. They were human. And that was more than enough. Urzel Kale watched in disbelief from his flagship. They are crumbling, he hissed. Their core is fractured. Their tech is ancient. Why do they not break? A secondary commander, voice shaken, replied, because they won't. Urzel turned. What? The aide swallowed. I served on the Scored campaign. I saw them once. Just a scouting party, a remnant cell. We thought. We lost the ships that day. They fought like they'd already died. He looked up. These aren't creatures clinging to survival. They're memories, trying to burn their way back into history. Beneath Varros 9, Rourke and Elia reached the old hangar, a cavern carved from asteroid rock, long abandoned and never cleared by the Dominion. Inside it sat something no Dominion scanner had ever detected, a Terran phase carrier, model, Cradle-class. Name, Seraph 9. Powerless until now. The moment Elias stepped near the interface, the ship woke up. Human imprint recognized. Vial signature confirmed. Engaging neural bond. Elia gasped. He wasn't just the signal's spark. He was its conduit. The ship bonded to him. And inside his mind, Earth spoke again. Welcome, Warden. Shall we remind the stars who we are? Elia's eyes glowed faint gold. He reached out with his thoughts, and the Seraph's engines roared to life. The Seraph 9 erupted from the asteroid hangar just as another Dominion ship attempted a final sterilization run. The phase carrier vanished mid-flight, reappearing directly behind the warship and cutting through it with a spatial distortion blade. Only Earth's Cradle-class ships had ever mastered. To the Dominion, it was like being struck by a ghost with vengeance in its bones. On the Valorian, Admiral Wraith received the final confirmation. Project Revenant. Status: on linear waiting final directivity. As hand hovered again. Once pressed, there would be no turning back. Commander Harlan, he whispered, prepare transmission. To who, sir? Wraith's face hardened. To everyone, across the galaxy, in trading ports, criminal stations, fringe colonies, and Dominion-conquered worlds. Every screen and holo display suddenly changed, and the image that appeared was unmistakable. An old Earth symbol, a planet surrounded by flame, and the words, we remember. Then a voice. Old, scarred, proud. Admiral Wraith. To the stars who forgot us, to the empires that mocked us, to those who believed Earth was ash and dust, we are the fire beneath it. You called us extinct. You laughed at our ruins. But humanity does not vanish. We wait. You've seen our spark. Now, witness our storm. He looked into the camera. Project Revenant. Full activation. Earthfire protocol engaged. Somewhere in the arc belt, light exploded in a place where there should be only darkness. A ship emerged. No, a colossus, shaped like a cathedral of war. Not designed to fight. Designed to end wars. And across the stars, every sentient being paused. The humans had returned. Not as survivors, but as reapers. They thought our silence was surrender, but it was the breath before the scream. In the depths of the arc belt, the stars bent unnaturally, not from gravity, not from weapons, from will. Project Revenant, Earth's ultimate contingency, was fully awake. It did not speak. It remembered. It was not a ship. It was a mind built from every lost soul of Earth's fall. Every mother who screamed when the skies burned. Every soldier who bled on orbital holes. Every child buried under ash. The Dominion had created it, and now it had opened its eyes. From his command deck on the UEF Valorian, Admiral Sol and Wraith stared at the massive presence on the outer holoscreen. No one could look at it for long. Revenant pulsed like a living relic kilometers wide, its hull carved with ancient Earth code and half-mad equations written during humanity's collapse. It drifted slowly, Yet every Dominion ship within 3 systems had already begun evasive maneuvers. Sir, Commander Harlan whispered, "What happens if we unleash it?" Wraith didn't answer immediately. His fingers rested on the command interface as he recalled. What Revenant was. It wasn't a doomsday device. It was a question. If humanity loses everything, what will it become to survive? And Revenant had answered, something the galaxy could never face again. On Varro's 9, the Dominion Enforcer lines broke. Rourke veiled at a last stand beneath the orbital vents. The gauntlet on his arm now cracked and glowing white hot. Elia, in full neural sync with Seraph 9, strafed Dominion transports from the sky. His eyes remained unfocused, distant, his mind partly human, partly something more. The boy wasn't flying the ship anymore. He was the ship. Above them, the Dominion regrouped. 6 planetary siege cruisers locked into firing formation enough to crack the colony open and leave it. Nothing but glass. And behind them came High Strategist Urzil Kale, aboard the Carrion Oath, his flagship surrounded by Dominion escort blades. His voice cut across every human channel. "You've awakened what you cannot control. You are insects with the gods' hammer, and the gods will not let you strike." Rourke leaned into the comms mic, blood dripping down his temple. "Then come down here and stop us yourself." In orbit, the standoff began. Revenant, unmoving, silent. A storm barely held in place. Dominion siege ships aligned. UEF fleets circled, and in every human vessel, commanders waited for one word from Wraith. "Release it." But Wraith hesitated. His eyes scanned the damage reports. Civilian deaths, broken colonies. The cost of survival. And he asked himself the question that had no answer. If we burn them all, do we remain human? On the Seraph 9, Elia hovered over the colony like a guardian angel. He saw everything. The ships, the fear, the countdown. And then, he heard it. Not through ears, through the core. Revenant. It spoke to him, not in words, but in feeling. "You are the memory. You are the match. Give us permission. Let the galaxy remember what it cost to erase us." Tears ran down Elia's face. He felt everything Revenant felt. Every soul lost. Every scream silenced. Every dream crushed beneath Dominion boots. He whispered into the silence, "There are children down there, still alive. We can't become monsters." And in that moment, Revenant paused. 1,000 minds held in digital frost. Listened to a 10-year-old boy. Down below. Rourke looked up at the sky. He knew what was coming. He had activated the signal. He had awoken the beast. And if Revenant fired, not only would the Dominion be wiped from this system, so would the colony. So would everything. He clicked open his private channel to the Valorian. "Wraith, you want a legacy? Here it is. You don't fire." Wraith's voice crackled back, pained. "If we don't, they'll slaughter us all. Then let them try." And then, something changed. A single Dominion cruiser veered off course, then another. Confusion rippled through the Zaleth ranks. And on the Valorian's deck, Commander Harlan gasped. "They're retreating." "No," Wraith said, voice distant. "They're afraid." On board the Carrion Oath, Urzil Kale watched as Revenant's core began pulsing again, but not with weapon charge, with signal. It was transmitting to every known language-capable system in the galaxy, a message, not a threat, a recording, the last moments of Earth, the scorching, the cries, the genocide, the defiance, the truth. For 300 years, the galaxy had believed humanity destroyed itself, that Earth fell to civil war and madness. But now the truth could not be buried. They had been erased. And now it remembered. Across galactic networks, beings of all species stared at the broadcast in horror. And awe. The humans were not broken. They were burned. And they came back carrying the fire. Urzil Kale stared at the screen. The propaganda, the panic in the fleets, the silence from his own allies. And for the first time in his life, he knew they had lost. Not just the battle, the story. The myth of Dominion superiority had cracked. And through it, Earth's legacy bled out like wildfire. On Varro's 9, the bombardment never came. One by one, the Dominion siege ships powered down their cannons. One by one, they vanished into fold space, not rooted. Shamed. In the silence that followed, Rourke looked up at the sky and breathed. Elia descended in the Seraph, exhausted but still glowing with something more than light. "You stopped it," Rourke said. "No." Elia whispered. "We remembered, and that was enough. They erased our world to kill our story. Now we write it in the bones of empires." The stars above Varro's 9 were still, eerily so. Dominion fleets had scattered. Their siege cruisers vanished into fold space without a final shot. The war paused, but not ended. Silence, Rourke knew, was often just the breath before a scream. On board the UEF Valorian, Admiral Wraith paced before a wall of cascading data. Every screen replayed the same moment. Dominion vessels shutting down weapons. System-wide relays broadcasting Earth's final hours to the galaxy dot across hundreds of systems. Neutral races had seen what the Dominion never wanted revealed. The lie had crumbled. The truth, bloody and brilliant, had spread, but a storm still brewed. Commander Harlan's voice cracked through the stillness. "Sir, incoming data burst. Unauthorized. It's from within Revenant." Wraith turned sharply, patched it through. The transmission began, but not with sound. With a face dive flickered once, then stabilized. A human woman, mid-30s, pale skin, shaved scalp. Her eyes shimmered gold, with lines of light dancing through her irises. Designation, Dr. Mara Kesai, Earth Intelligence, Black Shard Oversight, Project Revenant Lead. She paused, her voice trembled. "If you're seeing this, it means we survived. It means we remembered." The screen shifted to Carter's line with cryotubes, her voice echoing beneath footage of Revenant being sealed. Project Revenant was never meant to destroy the galaxy. It was meant to protect what was left of us when nothing else remained. She looked directly into the camera. But if it has awoken, there's a chance it has evolved beyond its fail-safes. That it remembers too well. The transmission ended dot, and with it, something shifted inside her EVENA and T dot above the arc belt. The Revenant's energy signature darkened, then surged tenfold dot, not with rage, but with grief. The ancient war mind had absorbed too much, centuries of agony, betrayal, and lost dot, and now it turned inward, searching for a final judgment. Would it be fire or forgiveness? On Varro's 9, Elia jolted inside Seraph 9 as his neural link trembled. "I feel it," he gasped, gripping his chest. "It's unraveling. It doesn't know what to be anymore." Rourke caught him. "Elia, talk to me. What's Revenant doing?" "It's looking for a voice. One last voice to tell it what we are." He turned his glowing eyes to Rourke. "And it chose you." Above the colony, Revenant opened. Petals of blackened steel unfolded like a massive, ancient flower, revealing a core chamber, a place built for one purpose. Final directive input, a human voice. One command dot, one legacy. Rourke stood before the shuttle doors, heart pounding. "I'm not a leader," he muttered. "I'm not a hero. You're human." Elia said quietly, "That's all it needs." The shuttle raced toward the Revenant's open heart. Through fields of light and memory, as it docked, Rourke stepped out into a chamber unlike anything he'd ever seen. Walls flickered with the faces of the fallen, children from the scorching, soldiers who died silent, cities torn from Earth's surface, names, thousands of them, repeating like prayers. Rourke Vale, Commander, human, input final directive. What shall Earth become? The voice was many, male, female, aged, young, and none. It was everyone who had built the Revenant, and now he would decide what it all meant. Rourke stepped forward. "I saw Earth burn," he said aloud. "I lost everything. So did the rest of us." He looked at the flickering names. "We survived in shadows. They erased our history, our people, our voice. But we endured. We remembered." He stepped onto the final days. The interface surged. "With light, I could ask you to wipe them out. The Dominion, every world that turned away." He took a breath. His voice cracked. "But that's not who we are." He looked up. "We are the ones who rebuild, who keep the fire without becoming fire." He whispered the final words. "Let them remember us, not by how we ended things, but by how we began again." Revenant pulsed dot once, twice, then its light changed. No longer violent, no longer raw dot, it became warm, golden dot, and across the sector, every ship received the same signal. Directive received. Humanity restored. Status, witness us. Revenant folded into itself, a brilliant sphere of energy lifted from its core dot, and then, for the first time since Earth fell, Revenant sang. A deep, resonant pulse, half hymn, half radiation, flowed across systems. Not a weapon, a memory encoded in sound, a song of lost dot, of home dot, of humanity. And the galaxy fell silent to listen. The Dominion fleets, scattered and stunned, disengaged. Some ships dropped their banners and hailed for truce, others simply disappeared, unable to face what they'd seen. High strategist Ursel Kale watched as his empire's fleets broke formation. Command networks dissolved and systems rebelled. A servant approached him, trembling. High strategist, what do we do? Kale didn't answer. He simply stared at the stars and whispered, they didn't just survive. They changed the stars themselves. On Varos 9, Rourke returned to the surface. The colony wasn't whole, but it was alive. Children ran through rubble. Laughing dot engineers patched walls, humming old Earth tunes. People stood beneath the rising sun, looking up, not in fear, but in hope. Elia approached Rourke quietly. Was it enough? He asked. Rourke put a hand on the boy's shoulder. No, he said softly, but it was the beginning. That day, we didn't just survive. We rewrote the ending they tried to give us. The war didn't end with fire. It ended with silence, and silence, as it turned out, was louder than any weapon. Revenant no longer hovered in the arc belt. It had drifted into the void, a quiet sentinel cloaked in the echoes of its own creation. It hadn't died. It had simply finished what it came to do, remind the stars who we were. 6 months later, Varos 9 was no longer a ruin. Where Dominion, artillery had scarred its surface, new cities bloomed, woven from old Earth alloys and memory. Not sleek, sterile constructions like the rest of the galaxy, but living places, gritty, real. Children played in gravity gardens grown over blackstone wreckage. Farms rose beside shattered dreadnoughts, their husks turned into shelters. Engineers trained apprentices in the shadow of the still glowing Seraph 9, which Elia had grounded permanently. It wasn't needed anymore. Rourkeville stood before a crowd in the heart of the rebuilt colony, a memorial rising behind him. A ring of shattered Dominion armor surrounding a tall column of black glass etched with names, thousands of names, not just from Varos, not just from Earth, but from across the stars, names of those who resisted, who remembered, who felt keeping the fire alive. Rourke's gauntlet was gone now. What remained of it had been fused into the base of the monument, a reminder that even the weapons we carry should eventually become foundations. His speech was simple. We weren't supposed to be here, he said, voice steady. Not anymore. They erased our cities, our skies, even our history. He looked up at the twin moons rising behind the platform, but they couldn't erase the story. He turned to Elia, who now stood taller, eyes still shimmering faint gold from his neural bond with Revenant. This boy lit the match, but it wasn't just him. It was every one of us who kept the memory alive, in whispers, in hiding, in hope. Rourke stepped back, and now, they will never forget us again. Across the galaxy, the echoes of humanity's return reshaped everything. The Zaleth Dominion fractured, not from defeat, but from truth. Systems under their rule saw Earth's final broadcast, the genocide, the silence, the betrayal. Entire planets rebelled, not in Earth's name, but in their own, because they realized the oldest truth. If humanity could survive that, anyone could. New pacts were signed. Old enemies laid down arms. The Terran Accord was re-established, not as an empire, but as a collective, a beacon. They didn't ask for tribute. They didn't build thrones. They rebuilt libraries. They sent teachers, and in every treaty signed, one line was engraved, we remember. Somewhere deep in the void, Revenant drifted. No longer angry, no longer raw. Its core pulse slowed to something almost peaceful, and before it shut down again, perhaps for centuries, it left one last transmission meant not for warships or governments, but for the scattered, the forgotten, the afraid. It was a voice, female, calm, to anyone who listens in silence, to any world told they don't matter. We were dust once, burned, buried, but we rose, not because we were strong, but because we never stopped remembering each other. You're not alone. We lit the fire. Now, carry it. The signal faded. But in thousands of small outposts and broken moons, people wept because they believed it. Elias stood on the edge of the colony, watching stars drift past. He didn't feel like a child anymore, but he wasn't sure he was something else either. The Seraph 9 rested quietly behind him, its weapon systems long offline, its neural interfaces sealed. It didn't need to fly again. Its purpose had been fulfilled. Elia turned when he heard footsteps. Rourke, you okay? The man asked. Elias shrugged. Sometimes I still hear it. Revenant. The memories. It's quieter now, but they're always there, Rourke nodded slowly. They're not ghosts, he said. They're your inheritance. He handed the boy something, a folded Terran flag, tattered but intact. Old Earth's original banner, recovered from a shattered outpost. You're the first generation that gets to grow up knowing who we really are. Elia clutched it tight and smiled. In the final archive vaults beneath the rebuilt Accord Hall, a plaque was installed beside the black glass monument. No names, just words. They thought we were ash. They thought our silence meant surrender. But silence is not the end of a story. It is the breath before we speak again. And when we spoke, we roared. Now, the stars carry our name, not as victims, not as myths, but as the ones who burned and still lit the sky.